My dear friends, I had been looking forward to seeing Bonhoeffer, pastor, spy, assassin. And I had honestly been looking forward to it ever since I'd heard it was being made, because from what little bits of snippets and pithy quotes and memes I'd seen about Bonhoeffer, who is the main character of the movie, seemed like a pretty interesting dude, a Christian pastor who stood up to the injustices of the Nazi regime and was executed after a failed plot to assassinate Hitler. So there's what happens in this thing. It's not a spoiler. And I was thinking, man, this is great. Of all the victims the Nazi regime had, everybody knows the stories about the Jews. But I was thinking, here we go. Finally, Christians get part of their story told of the suffering and the perseverance that we had during World War II in the face of an industrialized, atheist, socialist, tyrannical, genocidal regime. I mean, there was a few of them, but specifically the Nazis. They were film's favorite villain, and finally, we were going to get our story told. I was very much looking forward to that. Because yeah, the Jews were the most famous of the Nazis' victims, but there was plenty of other victims. Freemasons, gypsies, gays, disabled people, on and on and on. That's how all the story goes. But only one part ever gets told. Now we get to tell more. For the folks who cry about representation in film, well, here we go. We're getting more representation. That's a good thing, right? Spoiler, I was completely wrong. Not only is this movie completely terrible, but the Christian persecution at the hands of the Nazis that I was led to believe that this movie is about, barely a framing device. But before I bury this movie and bury it deep, let me point out the good things that were in it, because there were quite a few. Indeed, it had almost all the elements you need to make a great movie, but two main pieces of connective tissue weren't there: the main character and the script. And when I say the main character sucked, I do not mean the performance by actor Jonas Dassler at all, because he was very capable in the role and of carrying the movie on his shoulders. He had the right presence and elocution and charisma. He was fine. Indeed, most of the performances were good. In particular, a bright spot in the darkness of the catastrophe that was this movie was August Diehl, who played Bishop Martin Niemöller. He stole every scene he was in, no exaggeration. And again, not because the other actors are bad, they were pretty good, but because his character was the best written. It actually had an arc he developed over the course of the movie. He changed, he was dynamic, which is always more interesting than watching a static character, which almost everybody else was, especially Bonhoeffer. And the production values were good. The sets and the costumes were great. The cinematography was generally fine, and in the final scenes, transcendental. So between the acting quality and the technical aspects of the film, all the ingredients were there to make a great movie. We get some moving speeches and some scenes rich with dramatic potential, but we don't reap the promise. So now let me bury this thing. Me making the point about Bishop Niemöller having a character arc might lead you to believe that the other characters didn't have character development. And they mostly don't, especially Bonhoeffer. From very early on in the movie, he's convinced that he's right. And although the actor portrays some of the suffering that he went through during his trials and tribulations, and he does have tender and human moments throughout the film, the character is one note. He never changes his mind, he never has doubts, he always presses ahead. That's not dynamic, that's static. That's like watching a wall stand there. That's going to be less interesting than dynamic characters. So that's a technical gripe about how the character's portrayed in the movie. But unfortunately, the movie clued me into some misperceptions I may have had about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the person in the real world. The movie makes it very clear that Bonhoeffer was a priest of the liberation theology school of Christianity, which is actually just Marxist Christianity. Theology inspired by Karl Marx, the greatest prophet of Satan. It is a poison in the vein of the church that has led to far too many Christian churches sanctifying sin and putting justice in the world above the redemption of Christ. And whatever you think about Christianity, Christ, Christianity, social justice, one of these words is in the name, so maybe the thing should be the thing it's named. So while I don't know how much of modern liberation theology Dietrich Bonhoeffer followed, in the years following his execution, it's led to a lot of misery, despair, and ruination of the human condition. So this movie is asking me to root for a priest of that communist school of Christian theology. Oh no, that's a tough sell already. Now, I haven't read enough of Dietrich Bonhoeffer's writings personally. Like I said, it was mostly pithy quotes and memes. So I'm not questioning his devotion to Christ. I'm saying what his ideology does in the world today and has for decades is bad. And the movie showed me evidence of this early and often. So the ability to have a clear-cut dichotomy between good and evil, so I can root for the good because the Nazis are clearly evil. Well, now I'm rooting for the communist corrupter of church teachings against the Nazi corrupter of church teachings? Is that where I want to be? No, that's not where you want to be. That hurts the dramatic value of the film, because we have two evil ideologies going after each other. Who am I supposed to root for? Also, even the movie brings this out. Bonhoeffer didn't get arrested and executed for being a Christian. He got arrested and executed because he tried to assassinate the elected leader of a country. Whatever you think of a leader of any given country, generally those countries don't react well when you assassinate their leader. Those governments tend not to approve of such things. Generally speaking, if you fuck around, you will in fact find out. So that's my beef with Bonhoeffer himself. And I also mentioned there's a terrible script we have to deal with. Let me count the ways foreshadowing is established and then never followed up on. And boy howdy, did we miss out on what could have been some succulent fruit at the end of the film. Scenes and clues that indicate a payoff coming further down the line, left in the dustbin and completely forgotten. And the dialogue is clunky, not because of the German accents at all. We're talking Star Wars prequels level of quality dialogue. I mean, it is in the crapper. Oh, and remember, my hope that finally the tales of persecuted Christians under the Nazis, that's going to be told. Nope, I didn't get that. Outside of 5 to 10 minutes of screen time addressing the Nazis and their attempt to change parts of the Bible to suit their political ideology. And we also get Bonhoeffer and Niemöller spitting invectives at the few Nazi officers that bother coming to their sermons. And there is an off-screen rounding up the theology students that have been in hiding. But outside of that, we really don't get scenes of Christian persecution. Nor does Bonhoeffer spend much time talking about it. What he does spend most of his lines of dialogue talking about is how bad the Jews have it. He harangues everybody he can find about how bad the Jews have it. He makes secret missions to England to talk to Churchill himself, to ask Churchill to intervene on behalf of the Jews. He's focused almost entirely on saving the Jews. And real-life Bonhoeffer may very well have done that. But by the time it was over, a movie I thought from the marketing was going to be about Christians instead made it abundantly clear that this was still about the Jews and not Christians, including a final credit scene hectoring the audience about the rise of anti-Semitism in the world today, without wading into the myriad issues of talking about Jews in World War II. And speaking strictly to this movie and its place in Hollywood, this was a big letdown for me. There is an entire genre of films about the Jewish experience in World War II. And there have been movies that have been about the Jews in World War II that have won the highest awards the film industry has to offer. Indeed, it's alleged that at least 200 Holocaust films have been made since 1980. And not near enough time, you would think, to make 200 movies about a single topic. There is no shortage of the amount of screen time the Jewish story in the context of World War II has gotten. Heck, the director of Bonhoeffer already made another movie about Jews in World War II called Resistance. That came out before Bonhoeffer. You know, other people did suffer in World War II, you know, and actually way more of them suffered than the Jews did by any set of numbers you look at. But that seems to be the only World War II story anybody that makes movies is allowed to tell. Even though it's been made to the point that, I'm declaring it now, the Nazis as movie villains, it's over. It's done. It's played out. They're not interesting anymore. Movie writers, you're going to have to find new villains because this one has already done everything a villain could conceivably do. From the grittiest true versions of historical events to space empires based on the moon, Antarctic expeditions, breeding werewolf super soldiers. You name it, the Nazis have already done it in cinema. And yes, they were into all kinds of weird stuff, had wild ambitions, and took way too much meth. They also had mad drip, thanks to Hugo Boss. But unless someone is going to do something interesting and novel with them, they stopped being interesting movie villains and Inglourious Bastards. That was the last hurrah. And that was mostly due to the outstanding performances by Christoph Waltz and August Diehl, not because the movie was doing anything that interesting with the Nazis. If you made it this far, hopefully you listening to me lament for a few minutes about how disappointed I am with this movie, not only from my expectations, but also just how they did not succeed in bringing it together to make an awesome flick that should have left the entire theater crying. Will save you precious hours of your life that once spent on a bad movie are gone forever. Don't see Bonhoeffer.